Lyubo. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to get it rather precise. Welcome to the
Mhm.
podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good journeying here from Denmark, and I'm excited to be on your podcast.
Fantastic. I'm glad we can make it work coming across a wide time zone, LA to
Mhm.
Denmark, but we found a time that worked for both of us.
Mhm.
Now, I'm going to introduce you as how I found you is through your hiking videos. As
Mhm.
I'm kind of personally interested in that, and it's a lifelong passion of mine. But I found out that you do videos filming yourself and your brother kite surfing as well as snowboarding, and then have a media production company
Mhm.
as well. How would you introduce yourself?
Well, yeah, it's a pretty good overview. But I started as a passion for me because I grew up in Bulgaria near a ski resort. So I started just filming for fun snowboard videos with my brother and my friends in the mountains. And we were just having fun and enjoying each other and making little edits. And yeah, eventually I bought my first like better DSLR camera, and then the journey started of learning more about photography and filmmaking, and yeah, continued making snowboarding videos. At that time, I was also studying IT, and I thought that my passion or my career path was to be a programmer or IT expert. But I could see that my passion was for filmmaking. So yeah, we continued making snowboarding videos with my brother, with my friends, and also I started getting some clients working for them. And yeah, just growing up close to the mountains, eventually I could see also that I enjoy hiking, also from a very young age, doing day hikes. But we started with friends to do longer hikes, and so we started in 2017. We did like a 10-day trip with friends where we stayed in huts in Bulgaria. We did like a loop hike. And then in 2018, we decided to go a little bit bigger. So we did a hike in France and Switzerland. We did the Walker's Hot Route, which is a hike from Chamonix to Zermatt, which has a similar
Wow.
section as the Tour de Mont Blanc, which was about 180 kilometers or maybe 110 miles. It was a 12-day trip. And this was like my first camping trip, carrying tent and all that. So there was a lot of learning happening then. And then the next year, because I saw that I really had passion for hiking, so I saw I had seen some like hikers doing the Pacific Crest Trail in the States from YouTube, and all of them were saying that their favorite section was the John Muir Trail. And then I searched around more about John Muir Trail, and then I got more and more passionate about it, and there was like a few months of research to try to figure out how to make it work. And yeah, so then in 2019 I hiked the John Muir Trail, which was about 220 miles, and it was a 17-day hiking trip, and it was a lot more wild because it has long sections where you don't cross any roads, or big sections without like resupplies, so you had to carry food for multiple days, and also you had to carry a bear canister. So it was an amazing experience, and then I wanted to continue doing those hiking trips.
Let me jump in on that one. Now the
Mhm.
John Muir Trail, that's where, and thank you for kind of the introduction and kind of giving a lot of context there. Now the John Muir Trail is the first video I saw of yours, and I was
Mhm.
kind of poking around the internet because there's so many different YouTube videos of the John
Mhm.
Muir Trail. But what I noticed right away about yours is that um, the quality is so much higher than kind of
Mhm.
everything else I've seen, right? And I think you're kind of pulling on your professional background
Mhm.
in order to do that. But
Mhm.
that story that you just gave, one of the surprising things, I guess, to me is that it seems like your hiking escalated pretty quickly from a childhood day hikes to the
Mhm.
JMT, and some of these other hikes that you've referenced
Mhm.
are serious
Mhm.
commitments. How did that progression happen? Did you just I don't know, get bit by the hiking bug, if you
Mhm.
will?
Well, yeah, it was, I don't know, I guess I got passionate about it and started researching and just watching more and more videos and watching other hiking videos. And also that gave me kind of inspiration for what kind of hiking videos I like and what kind of stories I want to tell. Because there are different types of telling stories with videos. and I like the documentary style with the voiceover and storytelling as the story progresses. Um, and yeah, this is kind of how I developed this style, and it's a much longer process to have the videos be in this kind of more polished way, because like writing a script and recording it, it takes a lot more time than just using the video, like the sound from the video, or just vlogging, because some hikers are doing like daily vlogs while they're on the hikes, and also this takes also a lot of work. But once you're done with the hike, you're done. Where in my case, when I'm out hiking and filming, it's like amazing, and then the work starts with the edit and figuring out what would be the best way to tell this story, and what would be some valuable information for the viewers to learn and be more immersed in this whole video experience.
Now, that's interesting. So do you come into a hike almost as like an open vessel? You don't know what the story is going to be, and
Well,
you just
yeah,
experience it?
like hopefully you want to get from point A to point B, but there are so
Sure.
many things that happen along the way, and they develop along the way also, because you never know what's going to happen that day. You don't know what's going to be the weather or what challenges you're going to face. So the story develops along the way, but also I like to add some valuable information for future hikers that they might also want to do the hike. What would be something valuable for them to know, like how long is it, or how warm, or what would be the places to buy food, and yeah.
That's what I noticed is that it was informative, and especially some of these other hikes in Europe that I had never heard of. It provided such great context for somebody like me, but it also you kind of brought the audience along with your
Mm-hmm.
experience as well.
Yeah.
And another thing that I really like is we're on this kind of topic of how you're thinking about shooting it, is that you have a lot of, and I'm sorry, I don't know the technical term, but I would call them maybe fixed shots where
Mm-hmm.
you're filming from behind and you're kind of slowly progressing as it kind of films you walking as you change through different environments.
Mm-hmm.
Is that done on purpose? And
Yes, yes. Mm. Yeah, so basically I would, if I see some spectacular view, or maybe the trail changes from one type of scenery to another type of scenery, I would carry a very small tripod, and I would set up the camera, and then I would walk by the camera in this environment, and then I'll do that multiple times per day. Sometimes I would also film my face where I have to tell something, or hold the camera in my hands and point to something. But many of the shots are where I set the camera and I walk by, and I have to go back and get the camera. And so yeah, we are where you're looking kind of like a third person view, this environment and this person walking through this area. Yeah.
I thought it was a good mixture too
Mm-hmm.
of those shots as well as you kind of looking at the camera, and then too you can kind of mix in
Mm-hmm.
your vlog, your miniature vlogs or like mini statements, as well as your voiceover work.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And as a result, do you find that you're like almost hiking the trail twice, as you have to walk back and set up, or how extensive is that?
Well, yeah, sometimes, and especially let's say if it's a very challenging area, or it would be, you might like don't want to set up the shot, but you know that it's going to be an important part of the story. So you have to remind yourself, yeah, I have to. This is part of the experience. If I want to show it to viewers, I have to document it. Yeah, and even though it can be challenging at times, and sometimes I would even forget if you're really in a troublesome situation, then you're like so immersed that you forget to film it. But I, yeah, have to remind myself. Yeah.
No, that's really interesting, and I feel you on that one. I was in Costa Rica, biking, and I wanted to film it as well. And of course, the best shots seems like they're always in the most strenuous parts. And so
Mm,
I had to bike up, set the camera up, ride down the hill, and climb the
mm,
hill again. But as a result, you kind of get that
mm.
the iconic shot, right? So it's
Yeah, I
nice
can
to
imagine
have
with,
that.
with biking, it's even more effort, right?
Well, but you move faster,
Mm,
when you're not filming, just kind of rolling
yeah.
along. So
Uh,
there's pluses and minuses, right?
mm,
Now, the John Muir Trail, and as well as some of the other through hikes that you posted online, it seems like you really enjoy these long hikes going solo and kind of meeting people along the way.
mm.
Is that your intention, to have a kind of an individual experience?
Well, the first few trips I did were with other people, and they were also very enjoyable. But hiking with other people can also bring some like challenges. And so the John Muir Trail was my first like solo hike, and I really enjoyed it. I could have my own schedule. Wherever I want to wake up, I wake up. Whenever I want to start hiking, I could start hiking. And these mountains are also, maybe people think they're extremely like wild and dangerous, but on those trails, you meet a lot of people, and you meet different type of people. Some people you enjoy hiking with, some people you just say hi and bye, and you meet very interesting people in the mountains. So sometimes you would meet some interesting person, and then you could start hiking with them, and it's very natural because you can experience this hike together, and connect on a deeper level because you're also going through the same challenges. Mhm.
That's really interesting. And I saw that, right, some days you would kind of pick up a traveler, if you will.
Mhm.
And I think in the JMT you actually hiked for several days
Yeah.
with a companion before kind
Mhm.
of splitting off. So
Yeah.
a mix of everything.
Mhm.
And then how long did it take you to finish the John Muir Trail?
The John Muir Trail I did in 17 days.
Okay. Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. Did you do quite a bit of training to prepare yourself for that?
Um, to be honest, I try to stay in pretty good shape all year round, so I didn't really do anything particular. Maybe just a little bit more longer walks, or have a little bit heavier backpack for a little longer walks. And actually, before starting the John Muir Trail, I was for 1 week in the States, where I had rented a car and traveled to different national parks, and there I
Oh,
did
really?
day hikes, and this was
Mm.
also a very good experience and also preparation. Yeah.
What was one of your favorite national parks?
I really liked Zion National Park, and also Sequoia,
Hmm.
and yeah, I also went to Bryce Canyon, also very beautiful. But Zion was my favorite that I saw.
It's been a few years since I've been to Zion, but it's a fantastic park.
Mm.
It's got I'm trying to think, the main hike there is the Angel's Landing, is that correct?
Yeah. Mm.
Okay. And that has or now are you, maybe you already know and are aware, but I found out the other day that now that's a permit process.
Yeah. But back
So,
then it wasn't. But
okay,
it was
back
also
then,
very crowded.
was it?
Yeah.
Right. See, and that's the interesting thing in the States is that a lot of these iconic hikes are getting so popular that they
Mm.
kind of have to institute, crowd
Mm.
control. And as you know, the John Muir Trail, the permitting process is quite lengthy, if you will.
Yeah.
But you were able to secure a permit.
Well, yes, in my situation, because I wanted to hike from specific dates, and back then it was a lottery. I'm not sure if it's the same process again for getting a permit. So you had to apply like 5 months before your start date. And then if you didn't get your starting date for, let's say, 1st of July, then the next day the lottery runs for people who want to start 2nd of July. Um, but then I didn't get the permit for all the 2021 days that the lottery was running. But I wanted to have a specific starting date. But so 2019, it was a very high snow year. So a lot of people were canceling their permits. So I was checking the
Mm.
trailhead reports, and I could see when people would cancel. And then I just called the ranger and asked, can I get this permit for this date? And then this was the way I managed to get it. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see. Right, because I know you have a very all of your videos. It seems like they start and you kind of maybe off the cuff mention that you just so happen to get a few days off or so forth. But I know with the JMT it requires quite a bit of planning beforehand.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was curious how you were matching kind of your spontaneity with the planning required, and
Well,
that's how you did it.
yeah, it took like multiple months of planning because have to book the trip from Europe, and also with the food, it was also quite a lot of planning because there you don't get to go through towns so often as you would in Europe, or through huts where you could buy a lot of food from there. So for the JMT, I had to plan. I want to have this section here for 4 days and have to send myself a package to this ranch out in the mountain. And then the next section would be, let's say, 7 days, which was my longest section. And then I had to send a package again to another place, or I had to send a package to the town of Independence. So all of that had to be planned. So I had to estimate how many miles or kilometers you would want to hike per day. Um, yeah,
That's no, that the logistics and the coordination there is a real challenge, especially
mhm,
on the JMT, right? Because it seems like you're fairly far from towns, so
yeah.
it's quite a journey to kind
Mhm.
of poke out and in.
But
Um,
yeah, but to add to that, so there's a lot of planning prior, but then once you're out there, you're out there. You are open to any experience. Yeah.
but you do what you can when you can, and then
Mm.
you're out there with for the
Yeah.
experience. And that's something that I noticed. I haven't had the chance to do a lot of hiking in Europe, but one of the markers, the distinguishers, is how comprehensive the hut system is in
Hmm.
Europe. It seems like a lot of these European through hikes have the opportunity to stay in huts and potentially resupply as well.
Yeah.
Is that one of the key differences between?
Yeah. Especially to the mountains I've been in, like in the Alps and also in Bulgaria,
Mhm,
you have a very well established system with marked trails and huts where you could also call them, stay there. Also, I did a hike in Italy in the Dolomites where it's like a small hotel out in the mountains where you get breakfast, dinner, buffet, like nice Italian cuisine, comfortable beds. Where, for example, in Bulgaria, where we have those types of huts, we also have kind of shelters where the conditions are, because it's kind of like out in a rough place out in the mountains. So
mhm,
sometimes its conditions can be more basic, but still you get the shelter, so you don't have to carry tent if you're staying in huts, and you get the food. So again, your backpack can be lighter. It's it has advantages and disadvantages, right?
mhm, mhm. So Bulgaria is almost like a shelter style where you're bringing your own food.
Well, we also have a lot of huts in Bulgaria.
Oh,
So all these huts, they would also have some type of like soups or, well, depends on where the hut is located. If it's more isolated out in the mountain, it might be a little bit more basic. And sometimes there are also just basic shelters where it's unmanned and
mhm,
just people have to make sure they keep it clean. And I think that's also very common on the Appalachian Trail in the States, where you have a lot of shelters where, yeah, you can just have something over your head, basic, but no food to buy or no, yeah, comfortable beds. Yeah.
do you prefer one style or the other, or what are some of the differences?
Um, to be honest, I haven't really thought, because every hike it has its own kind of style, and I like both. The shelters give you a lot of like peace of mind that you know that you could get some food there. You could, if it's the weather is very bad, you could stay overnight there. So they keep you more like yeah, relaxed and safe. But at the same time, they bring more people. So
Mm,
if you want to have more like a wilderness and peaceful experience, some huts could be very busy, especially hiking the Dolomites. They had some massive huts like hotels, and but as soon as you hike a few miles, half an hour, 1 hour away from those huts, it starts to get more quiet and more peaceful and less crowded.
now, yeah, I think that would be interesting from just it seems like it's accessible from giving up more people the opportunity to come up, but I can see the pros and cons
Mhm,
in your case.
mhm,
Something that I noticed in the Bulgaria through hike, which was you said it's a section of the E4.
mhm. Yeah. So
Now, oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
Mhm,
That seemed a lot more rugged than the John Muir Trail, especially during the Alpine sections. Is that
mhm.
on the whole a more advanced trail than the JMT, or how does that compare?
Well, the E4 hike, it's yeah, as you mentioned, it's part of a long European through hike. I think it starts from Portugal and ends on the island of Cyprus. And there is the section in Bulgaria, it's about 260 kilometers, and I think about 160 miles. And it's called the Five Mountain Trails because it goes through five different mountains. So in this way, it's very varied. It's variety of terrains. It goes through some forests, wider trails, but also goes through some rugged sections where there are some like bolted bolted chains will help you to support yourself. So I don't remember if there were such sections on the JMT, but yeah, the hike in Bulgaria had a very good mix of both challenging sections, but also nice forested walks. But also in Bulgaria, as I mentioned, there are a lot of huts. So in that way, it was easier to plan logistically because I didn't have to send big packages. Yeah, I stayed a few nights at huts. I also carried my shelter for the flexibility if I wanted to stay at some place and without staying at a hut. Yeah.
I was going to ask that because it seems like you always carried not quite a tent, but a kind of a shelter aspect in addition to, even though you were planning on the huts. So does that
Yeah.
mean that you can't go hut to hut all the time, and that some nights you're going to be camping?
Well, for the trail in the E4 in Bulgaria, and then the next year I did the GR20 on the island of Corsica and in Italy a hike. For those hikes, you can do it hut to hut. But I like to have the flexibility of carrying a shelter if I want to camp somewhere where it's a nice place or nice view, or if the hut is full. Because, for example, for some of the huts, I didn't. For some of the hikes, for example, the one in Italy, I hiked during August and it could be fully booked. And but I haven't made any reservations, so having the shelter was a important backup plan.
These huts, by and large, function by a reservation system.
Yeah, especially in the more crowded areas. Yeah, and they are fully booked already from like December, January for hiking in July, August. So you can imagine how many people are trying to get there.
You gotta plan ahead in that
Yeah.
case, right? Okay,
Mm.
okay. But there's not a permit to go all the way through, just a permit for the actual huts.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Interesting.
there might be in some other places. I think that they introduced the permit for hiking Mont Blanc,
Hmm.
um, and I'm not aware there might be some other permits for hiking other mountains. But in Europe, mostly there is no requirement for permit. You can just go there.
Okay, okay. So kind of a distinction between it's really interesting to hear your comparisons between U.S.
Mm.
and Europe, hiking from that point of view. And then you mentioned that you hiked the GR20 as well.
Mhm.
What is the GR20?
Oh, the GR20, it's a 180-kilometer hike, which is about 115 miles, I would say, on island of Corsica, which is a French island in the Mediterranean Sea. And when you think of the Mediterranean Sea, you might imagine places like Ibiza or hot, like tropical, warm party places. But the island of Corsica, the trail there, the GR20, is many consider it as the most extreme hike in Europe because of the mountains are very rocky and very rugged.
Mm,
It's a pretty tough trail. Now it's pretty short compared to the true hikes that you guys have in the States, like Pacific Crest Trail, Continental Divide Trail. But its ruggedness, and because you walk on rocks for so many days, you get pretty beaten up. Um, and I hiked it in October, so the huts were already closed by then, or they were unmanned. Um, but hiking it in July and August, from reading the reviews, it can be very hot. So
mm.
it has multiple challenges to hike the trail: the weather, the ruggedness. But it's spectacular hike also, very beautiful. It was a big surprise for me because yeah, when you hear an island in the Mediterranean Sea, you think nice beaches and very enjoyable. But yeah, beautiful mountains.
I was shocked at how mountainous it was. Kind of just
Mhm.
reviewing your footage, you would not
Mhm.
think that you're on an island
No.
through many of those shots.
Mhm.
And now, I I mean, I'm just trying to go in my head through all these hikes. Now, does one stand out as the most scenic for you?
Well, probably the most scenic for me would be the John Muir Trail and the E4 in Bulgaria. Yeah.
Okay. Now, those two seem to have, at least from the footage, a similar environment, kind of like that above tree line hiking,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of vibe, and then
Yeah.
versus some of the others are a bit of a different style. Is that
Mm-hmm.
kind of roughly correct?
Yeah. And but also they were more wild, I would say. And again, the GR20 was also pretty wild. But yeah, I guess the John Muir Trail being my first like solo through hike, it holds some more weight in my heart. And yeah, because it required more planning, and the views were also amazing. It was a very wild hike because you're hiking pretty high for the most part. Um, yeah,
Right, right. Above tree line, I think for the
Mm.
majority of the trail, or at least a large
yeah,
percentage
yeah.
of the trail, man, I still can't get over as it's your first your real big solo hike.
Mhm.
That's quite an adventure
Mhm.
to bite off. And then from there, it seems like kind of all these other hikes, same style, is that you're still pursuing kind of these long distance through hiking. Really still solo. Is that
Mhm.
kind of the intention?
Yeah, but one thing I have noticed that the length of the hikes has gone shorter from year to year. And this back in 2022, I hiked in Norway, which also I should start working on creating a video from there. But there, I ended up cutting the hike even shorter due to the conditions. I wasn't expecting the conditions there, but yeah,
Was it cold in Norway or too much
it
weather?
was uh, it was very rainy. It was very rainy and very windy and very boggy. So wet shoes every day, the whole day, pretty much. And I also had a pretty interesting mix of like established trails where they're part of a national park where they're very well marked trails, and also sections where it says there is a trail going through there, but you don't really know exactly where the trail is going through or not very well marked. Um, so it was sorry, and when you combine that with rainy weather, and it was yeah, it brought a lot of challenges there. Mhm.
No, that's interesting that there's some route finding.
Mm.
Was your Norway hike kind of part of an established through hiking route as well, or was this something you strung together?
Well, it was a route which I had found online, but it's not like an official trail. So it's
Mm.
a route combining multiple trails, and it included some road walking in between where you had to link some sections in the mountains while walking on side of a road. Um, yeah.
And then is Norway from the I've never been, it's on my list to go, but it seems like it's so remote that it would be
Mhm.
hard to restock from a food perspective. Is that the case?
Yeah, but actually the hike where I had planned was up in the Lofoten Islands, which is a very narrow kind of archipelago, or how exactly it's called, like multiple islands and pretty narrow. So you can always maybe like 15, 20 kilometers from the trail, there would be a road. So
Mm.
10, 15 miles from the trail, there would be a road where you can get to and then hitchhike to a town. So it wasn't that remote in that area. But yeah, it was also my first time in Norway, and definitely there are much more remote parts there.
One of the things that I always find, non-hikers or people outside is that are a little bit shocked by is that a certain level of hitchhiking still goes on within the
Hmm.
hiking and backpacking
Yeah.
communities. I noticed. So I did the Colorado Trail in the
Hmm.
U.S. on a bike, not
Hmm.
walking. So
Hmm.
again, I was moving quite a bit faster, but it's known within the communities that at the trailheads you can hitchhike into town. It'll be um, without hitchhiking, it would be an extra potentially, I don't know, 15, 20 kilometers, so in the ballpark of 12 miles round trip. And so without that, you're adding substantial mileage
Hmm.
to your journey. And it sounds like
Yeah.
Norway is the same
Hmm.
kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah, it does involve some hitchhiking, especially if the trail doesn't go through a town or there are no huts. Maybe it goes through a road, and then from that road you have to get to town. And not always there are buses, so sometimes you have to hitchhike, get to a place, get some food, and then hitchhike back. And it's part of the experience. And some people, I think on the Pacific Crest Trail, they would walk those distances.
Mm.
But it depends how far it is. If it's maybe a few miles, no problem. But if it's 20, 30 miles out, it's a pretty long walk. But also, congratulations for the Colorado Trail. My plan was actually to hike it in 2020, but my
Mm.
flights got canceled. So I still haven't done it, but I would love to do at least some sections of it, the Collegiate Loop or parts of it. It looks amazing.
Yeah, no, thank you. That has been to my longest distance traveled.
Hmm.
Right, it's 500 miles. So let's see here.
Hmm.
Is that what is that in
It's like
kilometers?
800 kilometers.
800 kilometers. Now, but granted, I'm on a bicycle, so
Hmm.
even though it's rough terrain, you're mountain
Hmm.
biking, but you can cover quite a bit of distance
Hmm.
distance every day. Yeah, man, that's ambitious though that you were potentially planning on hiking it.
Hmm. It's a yeah much longer than all the other hikes I've done, and who knows? One day.
So that's on the list. Do you have it? It sounds like you kind of shoot for one big hike every year. Is that kind of your regular cadence?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, in 2021, I managed to do two hikes, one in kind of early in the summer and one later in the summer. And then last year I wanted to be a longer hike, but I ended up cutting it shorter. But yeah, this has been kind of the style I have been doing so far for the last few years. Yeah.
The cadence. So now does that mean that you've got a whole list of hikes that you would like to do that are kind of on the bucket list, if you will, in the next 5 years or 10 years?
There are many hikes or many places where I'd like to visit, but to be honest with you, I don't really know exactly for what hike I would love to do in 2023. Um, yeah, other hikes I had like known that I had to start planning, but from the last few hikes I noticed that many of the places they don't require so much planning. And for example, the GR20 I did like 2 weeks of planning and I was ready to go. And
Hmm.
so if I get the free time and the buzz, like I really want to go now, and then I just choose from a list of places and just go for it.
Well, I imagine after all of this experience that you're building up, you've got your gear pretty dialed in, your setup dialed in. Does it change from trail to trail, or are you pretty set?
Well, it has been a learning experience because
Hmm.
starting out, I bought just whatever came up. I didn't really research much, so I had pretty heavy gear. But I noticed, oh, this is way too heavy and way harder to carry heavy gear. Because after finishing the hot route hike in 2018 in France and Switzerland,
Hmm.
I on the last day I stayed in Zermatt at a campground and just left my tent and my sleeping bag down in the campground and just hiked my backpack and some snacks. And I noticed, wow, lighter backpack, it's impressively much more easier and enjoyable to hike with a lighter backpack. So for next hike, which was for the John Muir Trail, I had set myself a goal to try to lighten up my gear, and so I was researching more about backpacks and shelters and sleeping bags or quilts, and I got kind of hooked on trying to go as light as possible. So I had to weigh all my gear to choose like, do I want to keep this, let's say, jar, or this jar, or this socks or that socks, or spoon, or all the equipment, so I could make a choice what would be the lightest item that I can bring that would serve the same purpose. um, so it was a learning experience, but also I enjoyed learning about this. And yeah, now I have a few backpacks and a few type of shelters and a few quilts, and depending on the condition I'll choose one over the other. Um, yeah, so this is also kind of part of the research, knowing what conditions you'll be facing and what will be the best option of gear to bring with you.
So I used to work for REI, the outdoor company. The gear talk is near and dear to my heart. And I noticed
Hmm.
from a shelter perspective, you've opted for a pretty basic shelter. It
Hmm.
looks like it requires a trekking pole setup, so you
Hmm.
don't have poles, and then it
Hmm.
also requires guidelines to make sure that it
Hmm.
stands. Now
Yeah,
that's a commitment to go that
yeah.
light. It's
Hmm.
because it's got to take quite a long time to set up.
Well, actually, it's once you get used to the setup, it's not so complicated,
Sure.
but it can be challenging if it's a very rocky terrain to set it up, because you can't really stick the how it's called
The stakes, or the
yeah, you
poles.
can't really stick the stakes into the
Yeah.
ground if it's completely rocky around. So you
Mhm.
have to use rocks or some other creative solution to try to set it up. Where the freestanding tents, you just have the poles and then it stands on it. Um, so you
Weight
have to
tri
be a little bit more creative and get some more skills for like learning different knots to tie if you have to tie it to a tree or to some branch or something like this.
mhm.
Yeah,
It's
but
always
I
the
also
the trade-off, right? Weight versus ease of use, I
yeah.
guess. How does that do in the rain or in bad weather?
So yeah, that's what I wanted to mention. That I also kind
Okay.
of went overboard where I also had for the trip in Italy and in Corsica, the GR20. I only carried a tarp with me, so just a basic piece of material to cover yourself. And again, it was setting up with trekking poles. Um, but if one watches the hiking video from the Dolomites from Italy, they would see that I was having some trouble with the tarp because it was a very big rainstorm coming, and I knew that I wanted to be in town during that rainstorm, not to be out in the mountains.
Mm.
And but all the huts were fully booked, and I found the place in one campground, and I had like the last available camp spot, and the camp spot that they gave me was right next to a big hill. And so when the big rainstorm came, all of the rain that was raining on the mountain was going down that hill, and then it was going right through my camp place, camp spot.
Oh no.
And I was with a tarp, and so there was not fully sheltered in 360 degrees. So I had a ground cloth to protect from the ground underneath. But when the rain flow was coming from the mountain, it started going under the tarp, and so I was in a pretty sticky situation. But luckily, I came with a solution to stay at the washroom. So I just packed everything, and
Ah,
luckily everything stayed dry. So my quilt, sleeping bag, everything tent. I mean, the backpack, everything stayed dry. Only the shelter was wet from above and the ground cloth. So I packed everything, moved or ran to the washroom and just stayed the night there. So yeah, it was a learning experience to.
sure, sure. Well, first of all, it's never fun to find out that you've set your tent or your shelter up on a hill that the rain
Mhm,
is kind of
mhm,
channeling to. I haven't
mhm.
seen that. I would like to see that scene. And so it was coming down bad enough that you had to make the decision to pull
Yeah.
up and move.
Mhm. And the thing was that I was while the majority of the rainstorm was coming, I was out at a restaurant eating dinner. So I was just
Mm.
enjoying, relaxing myself, and then I come back, and then I see this scenario like, whoa, what should I do now? So yeah, I had to really think fast.
It seems like the majority of the days you show have been in good weather, and so it's
Mhm.
it's only been a few nights that you've spent kind of rainstorm wise. Is that the general case?
Well, actually, yeah, I think for most of the hikes I've had, majority of the weather I have been pretty lucky,
Hmm.
except for now hiking in Norway where it was the
Ah,
opposite, where yeah, most of the days were with bad weather, and then a few of the days were with great weather. Uh, that's also what I noticed about myself that hiking in bad weather, or especially in rain and windy situation, it's not very enjoyable for me, and something that maybe I have to get more accustomed to, or choose hikes where the weather is more stable. Yeah.
Adapt to, sure, sure.
Mhm.
Back when I did the Colorado Trail, Colorado is just the nature of it, right? Is that
Mhm.
in the
After
summer,
thunderstorms.
you got it.
Mhm.
Afternoon thunderstorms that by and large stop by the evening, you know. So if
Mhm.
you kind of get through the afternoon and then it's warm out, so you kind of dry by the end of the
Mhm.
day. So
Yeah.
it's not a huge deal, but
Mhm.
there were a few nights, same thing that I got rained on, and I opted for the tarp on that trip to
Mhm.
save weight, just like yourself.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's the one thing that's probably the biggest thing that if I was to do it again, I would actually bring a tent just for
Yeah.
that almost like peace of mind and
Yeah.
comfort that you can kind of hunker down and because if the weather gets bad, you could just ride it
Mhm.
out in a tent, no problem.
Yeah.
But in a shelter, it's a lot tougher.
Mhm. Yeah, it's part of the learning experience, right? We learn from all the hikes that we do. We learn that maybe it was not a good decision. Maybe I had went a little bit too light on that item.
Have you always been comfortable just cowboy camping, sleeping out under the stars?
Um, to be honest, I think I kind of got forced for it on the John Muir Trail on
Oh,
like
really?
it was maybe like the third night where it was very snowy or very rocky. Um, and so I was like, okay, it's gonna be pretty difficult for me to set up the tent here. So I was like, probably it's my time to try the cowboy camping. And it was nice. And then I did it multiple more times, and it was really enjoyable. But also in California, the weather was very dry for the most of the hike. It was great weather, and it was, yeah, a great experience to try cowboy camping. If someone hasn't tried it yet, I would really recommend they try it. Like maybe check the weather for the upcoming days or the night, and maybe have a shelter with you just in case. And
That's
if it's not gonna rain, if it's not gonna be buggy,
mhm.
give it a try. Yeah.
I didn't realize that you were kind of forced into that position.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm, mm.
Okay. Just and that was because you couldn't set up your shelter? That
Well, yeah, I was looking around. I was
uh
tired, and it was kind of like a campground with different like types of camp spots. Like on the John Muir Trail, there was this app called it was called Gut Hooks. Now I think they changed the name, where you could see the different camp spots along the trail. So it was showing that there should be places to camp around this area. But I could see that yeah, the ground was pretty rocky. So for freestanding tent, no problem. But I was pretty new with that tent with the trekking poles, so I didn't have much experience setting up on the rocks. And I tried the cowboy camping, and it worked. Yeah.
if somebody would like to work up to these hikes, what is the process that you would recommend somebody goes through?
Well, I would recommend start small. Even though some people just go jumping straight into the big learning experience, this might be catastrophic because mountains can be dangerous. So starting small would probably be a better idea. Check the weather, maybe see some gear videos. What are other people bringing, or search online for some blogs. What are some essential items to carry with you, so you're safe there and also you enjoy your experience. And yeah, maybe try to see if you can go to a place with nice views, because this can be also very enjoyable, where you maybe hike, you get tired, but also you get to experience some natural beauty, and this could also make your experience better. And also see, maybe consider, are you scared to go alone? Maybe find some buddies to hike with. Or if you enjoy hiking yourself, yeah, go for it yourself. But also a good tip is to remember to tell to some friends or relatives where you'll be hiking, so that they know that if you don't come back after a certain time, that they should try to get back with you. Yeah.
Wise words for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mentioned, you know, you kind of choose your hike based off how scenic they are or how appealing they are.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how you go about choosing kind of where you want to hike and what you want to do?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I try to go to the places which attract me the most. So the most scenic hikes. and also that would be somewhat accessible, like maybe hiking to Nepal right now, probably amazing hikes. But for me at this time, maybe it's a little bit more challenging to go all the way there and figure out the logistics, even though it's many people are doing it. But I try to see first the most accessible hikes. What are the best hikes nearby? Or what am I most attracted to? What am I most pulled to experience? Yeah.
Is that something that would be of an interest to you? You mentioned Nepal, kind of the I would call it like high altitude international
Mm.
mountaineering. Yeah, is that something that's on your radar, maybe for the future that you would go into?
Well, I have seen they have like a few hikes which are not really including mountaineering, so
Okay.
trail hiking, and I would love to do them. And mountaineering, I since COVID, so I started doing like hiking in the winter also, but it's pretty basic, just with snowshoes and then snowboarding down the mountain. Um, but that would be also a great experience to start getting better at. But that would require some really getting the skills right, because there it gets dangerous. So signing up to some courses or hiking with people or mountaineering with people who really have the experience that they can show you exactly what's possible and what's too dangerous. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned snowboarding, and I know your brother, it sounds like, is involved in kite surfing as well.
Mhm.
Are those activities that you use to kind of hone your craft in terms of videography, or just enjoyable additional activities as well?
Well, this is where it started from. So this, yeah, kind of watching some other like more cinematic snowboarding videos or videos from other like big magazines that they were releasing once per year. Now the whole industry changed, so people are posting a lot more online. But back then there was like they would release a big video, and then we would watch it and then try to replicate like all the amazing shots that they do or the big tricks. And yeah, this was kind of where the learning started.
It's interesting that you say that, because now that I've seen some of your snowboarding videos as well, it's very clear that kind of they have an influence into your hiking videos.
Mhm.
Do you have the same thought process where you're trying to tell a story, or is it more an action adventure film?
Well, the snowboard and the kiting, it's more about the action. But if, for example, we did a kite surf trip to Zanzibar in Africa,
Hmm.
which is an island of the country Tanzania in Africa, and there I try to incorporate more of the culture, show the local people, show the Maasai, the tribe of Maasai, how they're also living on the island, and try to incorporate more of the experience we did, like the snorkeling or swimming with dolphins and the tropical fruits. So I try to include that more. Um, yeah, so they kind of add to the kite surfing video. They add more to the viewer experience.
Is Zanzibar known for its kite surfing destination?
Well, actually, yeah, it's getting pretty popular, especially also from people from Europe because it's cold here during these months, and they have pretty okay wind there. Actually, the last year we were again there, it wasn't that windy, so that's why the plan is now to go to Mexico instead. My brother is already there, and I have to book my ticket soon to visit them and also film some kite surfing there. And But yeah, Zanzibar is pretty famous for kite surfing. A lot of people from Europe go there in the cold months. But actually, it's the wind is even better in the summer months in Europe. So June,
Mm.
July, August, Zanzibar has better wind, but it's also warmer here. So people would just go to the places that are closer to Europe instead of going all the way there.
I've never had the opportunity to kite surf. I've done,
Mhm.
I grew up surfing, went, and I've done a little bit of windsurfing, and then I got to try one of those hydrofoils one time,
Mhm.
which was a lot of fun. But talking to friends and other kite surfers, it seems like it's very location dependent. That the weather and the climate is
Mhm.
pretty critical. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, for me, usually I would just my brother is the kite surfing expert,
Mm.
so wherever he goes, I know that would be a nice place to visit. So I just visit him, we film, and yeah, so he knows better all the spots. I just go there, experience the culture, do some kite surfing, do some kite surf filming, and have some fun times together. Yeah.
It's great that you can kind of follow them around the world and have all these
Hmm.
additional experiences
Hmm.
in addition to your kind of hiking as well. That kind of parlays into your work life, right? Where you own, is it now, would you describe it as a media company, a video company?
I would say I'm more of a freelance videographer
Okay.
where I have like my own clients, but also I'm also oftentimes hired by other media companies just to film for a day or two, and then I give them the footage, and then they take care of it. So this gives me a lot of freedom to choose when I want to take a vacation and when I want to work more. Yeah.
Do those long trails, right?
Exactly.
When you're working with a client, do you have the opportunity to tell to strategize on the story the way that you get to on your hikes, or is it a bit more structured?
Well, it's I would say more limited because they have their own kind of story that they want to tell, and usually it's more one-sided. They want to tell this type of story, so this is what we do. We don't because the hiking videos I make are more like a documentaries, so
Mhm.
it's they expand over a much longer video. Where the client they want short, the best shots, tell the best story, show the products in the best way. They don't want to show when you are suffering or the bad parts of the products.
Okay,
Yeah. Mm,
gotcha. But much more of like a highlight reel, if you will.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then how long have you been doing for this kind of the freelance stuff?
Well, I opened my company in 2016.
Mm. Was that a departure before where you were doing something else and you kind of had the drive to do your own gig, go solo?
Well, I before that I was studying
Mm.
IT, and then I graduated, and then I was searching for jobs, and then I had some internships with some media companies, and then I also studied film and TV production for 6 months, and yeah, it was about time to start my own thing.
So that's right. You mentioned so you considered going down the IT route, but
Hmm.
ultimately decided to change directions.
Yeah. Well, I had an internship when I was in fifth semester in university where I was hired by a like IT company where I had to work in their office every day. And I noticed it was like a five month internship. And going there every day, I noticed that the corporate IT world was not really where my passion was. And I was really passionate about filmmaking and videography. So yeah, I started leaning more into that and started getting the first few clients. And then I saw that it was possible and decided to go all in. Yeah.
I saw that you worked with Iron Man. How was that
Mhm.
experience?
It's pretty wild because
Yeah.
it's a very tough race, and also I would usually get hired as a videographer, and then the person who hires me, he will have an editor. They would have to make like multiple edits per day, so you have to go run, film the swimming, go back, deliver the footage. Then we would jump on a motorbike where we film the bikers on the course and try to go to the best spot. So we tell the motorbike driver, can you please take me to here where we know that there are the scenic spots? So we film around, we get a few shots, then let's go to another place, and then again go back to the editor, give the footage, and then start filming the running. Because for the viewers that don't know, it's a pretty long race. So 180 kilometers of swimming, of biking, which is what like 110 miles of swimming, and then a full marathon of running, 26 miles. And at the beginning was the swim section. I don't remember exactly how long it was, but again, a pretty long swim. So it's a long day, and also the athletes are pretty tired, but also for the filming, it's also a long day of filming. And and then once you are done, you're like time to rest. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, right. It's a swim, bike, run event. And then
Hmm.
in the case of the full Ironman, that
Hmm.
distance, which it sounds like you did, a very long day. I mean,
Hmm.
for a pro, maybe 8 hours in that ballpark is a
Something like
good
this,
time.
yeah.
But
Hmm.
for a more, for a, a more normal human, well, who's in
Hmm.
phenomenal shape, right? They're out for
Yeah,
12 plus hours.
yeah.
Now, and so it sounds like you're right there with everybody suffering
Hmm.
in the elements, in the heat or the
Hmm.
cold, wherever you're at.
Hmm.
Would you scout out the locations in advance in order to
Well,
find the
yeah,
best scenic
because
shots?
because I have helped mostly for the Ironmans in Denmark, so we know already what are the, let's say for bike part, we know where is a steep hill, and also the the audience, they also know. So the audience gathers up there because they know that this is the famous hill that the
Mm.
bikers suffer through and need some more assistance. So they cheer them up more there. And then we know also because living in Copenhagen, I know like what is the scenic places in the city, and we days before the race we know where the trace the run track goes through. So we know, okay, we think here we have to film a drone shot, here we have to film this church or this cathedral or to incorporate in the video.
Mm.
But also I've been on some other Ironmans in Hamburg, and also there we ask the organizers what would be the best spot to film, and then they tell us here we like this thing to be in the shot, and yeah.
You mentioned the drone shot, and that's something that I do notice is missing from your hiking photos or
Yeah,
hiking videos.
yeah.
Are are they not an option, or do you not want to hike with the drone?
Well, in many places in national parks it's not allowed. But for me, the biggest reasons were usually because of its weight.
Oh, interesting.
Because, yeah, because carrying everything on your back, I was trying to keep everything as light as possible. And a few years ago, there were not so many light drones. But now, there are much lighter drones. So for the hiking trip in Norway, I finally had a smaller drone with me. So there will be finally some drone shots also because I agree they bring the the scenery to, yeah, they show the scenery in so much better ways that you cannot really film from the ground. So I was happy to bring it with me, and I was happy that I could yeah have the smaller drone with me.
Well, especially someone like yourself, who I feel like is really capable of integrating those drone shots in kind of a
Hmm.
polished manner, right?
Hmm.
I know the challenge is on YouTube especially is that you can overuse the drone shots and they can kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
become the focus of the video rather
Hmm.
than a transition. Do you hike with a minimal camera setup?
Well, this was also a process to figure out what would be the lightest and the best gear at the same time, like the balance between good quality and lightweight. So I got lighter lenses.
Mm.
I don't use my big lenses that I use on corporate shoots. So I have some smaller, lighter lenses that are more compact. Maybe they don't have such a wide aperture, but something that makes them lighter. And so yeah, I also had to figure out what would be the best setup that I could carry, that I would be happy with quality wise and also carrying on my back. Uh,
What it looked like was you do a tripod, a one camera, and
mhm.
and I would have thought GoPro, but no GoPro or as well.
No, no. So I carry a Sony mirrorless camera
Mm.
with interchangeable lenses and a small microphone on top. And then I have a very small tripod, and
Oh.
that I put on the ground or on rocks or on some roots. Um, and I know that I could having like a taller tripod, it will get different kinds of shots. But so far, I have stuck with a shorter, small tripod for the weight saving. Yeah.
Well, hey, Yubo, I wanted to thank you so much for joining and coming on the podcast. This has been great, and it's been so interesting to hear about your life and all of your hiking adventures, as well as kind of your adventures and your brother's adventures with snowboarding and kite surfing, as well as your corporate life. So thank you for coming on.
It has been my pleasure, and thanks for having me.
Beef,
If you want to find more, yeah, you
yes,
can
beef.
check out my YouTube channel, Lyubo Yanev, and I hope you enjoy the hiking videos on my channel. And stay tuned for the upcoming hiking videos.